What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? After more than 100 episodes recorded with those very executives from companies like Disney, Amazon, Netflix, Cigna, and Google, the answer is clear. They learned lessons in leadership from the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. Some of our guests' athletic experience earned them a place in their sports Hall of Fame, like Chick-fil-A Chairman Dan Cathy. Some hung up their cleats after high school, like Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, while others, like Condoleezza Rice, claimed they were terrible in their sport. But no matter their skill level, they have all told me that being a part of a team taught them lessons they still use as leaders today. In partnership with Maxwell Leadership, I'm your host, Don Yeager, here to give you an all-access pass to genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with today's business icons so that you can create powerful, positive change in your own organization. This is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Peter Platzer, CEO of Spire Global, a provider of space-based data. Peter's team builds and operates a fully deployed satellite constellation that observes the Earth in real time using radio frequency technology. Peter grew up in Austria and describes himself as an ex-Wall Street businessman who quit his job at age 40 and enrolled in the International Space University to pursue his dream. After he founded Spire, a mentor of his suggested that he pick up the sport of squash, which he now lists as some of the best advice he's received in his career. Remember to download our bonus resource with fill-in-the-blank notes and reflection questions on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/165.
The two words change and growth are inextricably linked from each other. The more you strengthen your change muscle, the more change you can absorb. If I only do one exercise, I'm not going to get better. So if I want to grow, I need to change my routine. Whatever way you want to look at it, when you change something, you grow. When you grow, you change.
Peter, thanks for joining us.
Oh, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
First order of business, I have to express some fascination and some admiration. So many people dream about taking a big risk, going and trying something that just fascinates them, but they seldom have the courage to execute. You had this amazing career on Wall Street, well-paying, doing great, but you had a passion with space.
Thank you that you call it my passion and like the guts that I have. I think a lot of people call it at that point in time, at least, that I'm absolutely crazy.
Well, I was going to say that too, but I thought that might be a little aggressive.
No, totally fine, totally fine. I literally had a friend when I told him that I'm going to leave Wall Street and at 42 go back to live in the dorm. He had serious concerns about my mental health. And he sat me down and says, Peter, are you really sure? So you have to be prepared for that conversation. But I think what has helped me, Don, is that I've been fascinated with how we can leverage space to understand better the universe, ourselves, life on Earth, improve it, ever since being a teenager. But it was a very, very slow-moving industry. And then there was this event that I had at an astrophysics summer school in Italy. After the typical lunch of 3 courses of pastas and 2 bottles of wine, we had our plasma physics course. Our teacher, Professore Dottore Einaudi, had the great insight, why don't we do this outside, kids? So we moved outside. We were sitting in the grass. We were overlooking the hills of Tuscany. And he was telling the story of a friend of his who had built a space instrument over literally the course of a decade. That's how long the mission had been delayed. Finally, that instrument gets on the satellite and they all sit in this VIP room and their rocket goes up. It explodes. In that moment, the career of his colleague pretty much exploded as well, because he never got to write the papers, get the tenure that he thought he's going to do. And there I was sitting and I said, okay, that's not going to happen to me. Space has to wait. This is not for me. I ended up working for the Boston Consulting Group in Germany and in Asia, and they sent me to Harvard Business School. I did a process called The Path by Laurie Beth Jones, where through a series of exercises, you write a mission statement for your life. And that came out with incredible clarity to lead, inspire, and create the business of space for the benefit of all. While it was crystal clear that that was my mission statement, I could also see that the timing wasn't there, right? There was like this feeling of it's not the right time. It was still a slow industry. And so I ended up going to Wall Street. Then 2009, there was an event at NASA Ames. Got to meet Peter Diamandis, Salim Ismail, and others. And we talked about exponential technologies. I did a little bit more research and then had like this very distinct, strong feeling that now is the right time. And so I quit my job. I asked Peter to write me a letter of recommendation to the best place that I've found in the world to study everything about space, which is France, Strasbourg. I got a full scholarship from the European Space Agency, and off I went studying everything about space.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
So you go to study everything there is about space. An overwhelming proposition. I mean, space is infinite.
Yes. I did research on satellite technology, their performance improvements, because I had an inkling that I'm looking at an exponential technology. I read every single paper that I could get my hands on about satellites technology. And I interviewed about 100 people in the space industry, asking them what they think about this technology. And then I plugged it into my second favorite toy in the world, an Excel spreadsheet, and I plotted it. What I saw was vastly different from the experts. You have an exponentially improving technology and a linear expectation, and that delta is your business opportunity. So I designed a business plan around leveraging that exponential technology. I predicted capabilities and derived use cases for technology with that capability in 5 and 10 years out. And with 2 classmates, we shipped off to a proverbial garage in San Francisco and built our first satellite.
In a garage?
In a garage, me and my co-founders. We had like this fun instrument, which is a shaker table, where you shake with like high G forces your satellite to see if nothing flies off. And we had a former Air Force person walk by that worked in the garage to help us. And he said, Peter, can you put an enclosure on top of that shaker table in case something does fly off? It doesn't kill someone across the room. Good point, Jeremy. Let me put something on top. Yes. So we built our first satellite in a garage in San Francisco.
Is that satellite currently flying around the world?
It has already deorbited. So that's now over a decade ago. But it was a satellite that has been flying. My wife had the call sign of the satellite as a ringtone. I had a picture and a song from my voice coach from New York City on the satellite. So it has been flying.
That's awesome. So not many people listening are probably going to go out, rent a garage, and build a satellite. But we do have people that do want to make maybe some mid-career changes.
Yeah.
You've obviously found some success, but I'm sure there are some points of caution. Give me some of the points of caution you would offer to someone looking at making a change as dramatic as yours.
It's a trade-off. You have to understand that when you walk the less trodden path, that it's a trade-off. You are more likely to stub your toes. I was living in a nice apartment with my girlfriend, now wife, in New York City. We were having a nice dinner as we were going to nice places for holidays. And then I said, okay, I'm leaving all of that. So I left. When I came back, we had $1,000 a month of income for both of us. Couldn't afford to live in San Francisco, so I lived in Mountain View. I was sitting on the train for an hour and a half every single day. Trade-offs.
Right.
Not everyone is willing to make that trade-off. And I think that's totally fine. But you have to be aware of that. You also have to be aware of that you follow your passion does not mean everything goes well. You will have ups, you will have downs, you will be devastated. If something that you deeply care about is not going well, it might impact you stronger than something that you feel like, yeah, it's my job. Yeah, it's not going well today, but I'm hanging out with my friends. I'm fine. It's like not something that is directly attached to you as a person. So there are trade-offs, but there are also moments of incredible highs and fulfillment that are very, very hard to reach when you're not following something that you're passionate about.
You know, what we're really talking about here is change.
Yeah.
You actually did an interview in 2021 with Mind Forest in which you were asked to give one word to describe the word change, and you said growth.
Yeah, growth. Yeah.
Put that together for me.
Yeah. You're going to the gym. The only way to grow your muscles is change up your routine. Once you do the same routine, your muscles get used to it. You're not going to grow your muscles anymore. So you change your routine, you grow your muscles.
Right.
A little bit of salt makes just about every dish better. Say you want to try a new exercise, but let's say you change not just one thing in the exercise, but you change, 5 different things in the exercise. You suddenly expose yourself to injury. Because if you change too much at one point in time, it just can literally break things. If you change too much in your life at one point in time, it could be overwhelming. So a little bit of salt, even if you make pancake batter, makes every dish better. I encourage you to put in a little bit of salt. I was known for making the best coffee in my camp because I put a little bit of salt onto the grinds and it creates a much better coffee.
Wow.
But you put too much salt on a dish, it becomes uneatable.
Right.
And the same thing is true for change. You do too much of it at one point in time, it actually becomes counterproductive. It doesn't generate growth, it just generates injury. So you do have to be thoughtful about it and just find the right amount for where you are right now. The more you strengthen your change muscle, the more you grow your ability to change things, the more change you can absorb. I'm playing squash now. If I only do one exercise, I'm not going to get better. So if I want to grow, I need to change my routine. The 2 words, change and growth, are inextricably linked from each other. And it goes to the physical, the emotional, the mental, the cognitive, the knowledge, whatever way you want to look at it. When you change something, you grow. When you grow, you change.
I love it. They are very cyclical, isn't it?
Yeah. In our company, that growth mindset from Carol Dweck is one of the core tenets that we talk about a lot, that we seek out with people. I'm sure you're familiar with it. People with a fixed mindset, everything is a test.
Right.
And a test you can fail or you can, succeed in. And that makes you very resistant to change. It makes you very resistant to, doing something new. Versus a growth mindset looks at everything as an opportunity where I can learn something. That creates a far more rich and interesting life than if you look at everything as I can fail or I can succeed and it's scary. I very viscerally experienced it when I left Austria and Germany. I grew up in Austria. I speak German. I almost failed English in high school. I was very, very scared of languages. And then my job sent me to Asia. It was very scary. I suddenly was in a different culture, different language. It was a massive amount of change, but I was in a company that I knew. I was in a job that I knew. It was in a field that I understood really, really well. So there was a lot of things that I maintained. Once I was there, after a year or so, felt comfortable, leading my life in English and a different culture, the world suddenly became much, much smaller. Suddenly, the concept of living in a different culture, in a different country, was not scary at all anymore. Since then, I have lived in 8 countries. I lived and worked on 3 continents. If you now tell me, Peter, you have to move to Ogadogo and learn a local language, I'm going to say, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a stretch, but it's fine. This training of your change muscle as you do something and then you learn it, and then you can do more of that change over time and you get more comfortable with it because you kind of know how it goes.
You got to grow your change muscle. It totally makes sense. I know you play volleyball. You're on the team there in Austria, taking classes they didn't offer at my school. Was there a lesson in an early age you've used as a leader today?
100%. I love being on teams. That's something very unique to me. My father, for example, did not want to be on teams at all. All the sports that he did were individual sports. And I've been with people that, I like running, but I don't like playing soccer.
Right.
I learned about myself that I am the best version of myself on a team. Doesn't have to be that I'm the leader on the team. Just being on a team is incredibly meaningful for me and brings out the best in me. Even like the physics that I did was part of a team. At CERN, you are part of a large team working on one experiment together, and everyone has to like pitch in, and everyone has their role, and everyone has to do the night shift for their run and stuff. So being part of a team is something very, very core to me. Knowing this about myself has definitely helped me craft like the right places in my life for me.
A lot of business leaders use the word team to describe their organization. Me and my team. Truth is, they're not really teams.
Yep.
They're just a group of individuals, many of whom are actually competing against each other on a daily basis, as opposed to cooperating with one another. As a business leader today, what are some of the tips you would offer someone on how to be better at building a team?
I was in Harvard Business School and I was playing at the volleyball team there. And generally, we would travel to the tournaments with the volleyball team. But then we also created a tournament on campus. Because on campus, there were like then more players, we had a Harvard Team 1 and a Harvard Team 2. The Harvard Team 1 were all the people that had played professionally. Harvard Team 2 were the people that had played more recreationally and loved it. I was on Harvard Team 2. Now, the tallest player on our volleyball team was shorter than the shortest player on the Harvard 1 team. We put the team together and we played and we beat all the other teams that had come, and we ended up in the final against Harvard 1. Classic David versus Goliath story. The people on my team had this shared mission of proving everyone wrong. And everyone on that team had subsumed themselves to that shared mission. There was a person on our team that would have loved to be the setter, but she was a phenomenal passer. So I had asked her, Jennifer, would you please be our passer? Would you be our joker? Right? Because she was very short. And she said, I love setting, Peter, but I will be the passer for the team. We played a phenomenal game. We dragged out that final into 5 sets, the last set going into overpoints. We ended up losing, but simply the performance that the team had put up, it showed that 6 people playing as a team can show up like 7 or 8. And it was not until Harvard 1 came together as a team rather than a collection of 6 strong individuals that they were able to beat us. What creates a team is this shared mission. It's a shared set of values, a shared set of beliefs, and then what reinforces that are shared sets of experiences.
What's so cool about that entire story is that it was all about essentially a recreational volleyball tournament.
Yes.
But you can become a team if you have something that you're trying to accomplish together that you couldn't accomplish if we just walked out there and said, we're each going to do our own thing.
That's 100% correct. They were only able to beat us once they decided to become a team as well.
Isn't that funny? I mean, they probably just assumed they didn't have to stretch to that space because they were physically more dominant.
Yes.
So in your business world today, how do you create those shared set of experiences for your team today?
Give them a space where they can have them and strongly encourage them. So Spire, everyone works out of one building. Some offices are combined by airplanes. Because of our satellites and our customers being global, the company was global from early on days. A year into the company, we opened an office in Singapore. A year later, we opened an office in Glasgow because we needed that 8 hours apart triangle of global coverage for managing our constellation, managing our customers, relating to them, and hiring. Even at a small scale, we were doing remote teams and remote works for a long period of time. We are one company and we have one set of values. I created a set of values for Spire with my teammates very, very early on, like in the first 6 or 12 months. Global, faster, reliable, relentless, collaborative. And the tenets are around growth mindset and autonomy, mastery, purpose. We have a whole system internally where we reward people for demonstrating one of those values. And they have stayed with the company still today. You know, we use them in our language. We use them how we recruit, how we promote people, how we evaluate people. So we had like those shared sets of values. We had a shared set of tenets and then shared experiences on a basis of shared values, like how we hire, creates a very strong foundation for a true team that is not defined by wearing the same jersey. It's selection. It's in the interview process.
You're asking questions that are going to draw that from them.
Yeah, exactly. In the interview process, every person who does an interview generally gets assigned 2 values that they're looking for. You would expect that a great scientist or a great engineers, most of them are going to score very, very high on unbounded. Our value for being able to think differently, think outside of the box, be innovative, looking for things that have never been done before. But then you're going to check on like, okay, how collaborative are you? Just ask stories about them. And sometimes you ask them stories about their life. Sometimes you ask them stories about their work and you look for that. Ask them about, okay, how do you feel about deadlines? You don't necessarily ask it that way, but you find a way to get at this value of reliable. In the team, you got to do what you say you're going to do when you do it.
Right.
Early on, when we were still small enough, I demonstrated that by, I don't know if you ever did this as a kid, you line up in a circle. I need about, 10, 15 people for that. And then you turn so everyone looks at the back of the person in front of you. And then you say, now everyone sit down slowly together. And then everyone can sit on the knees of the person behind them. So everyone has a chair, even though they couldn't do it by themselves. And it's like this trusting and reliable that everyone has to do it together. And then we all sit and we all have like a comfortable position.
It's pretty powerful.
You find ways to get out from them. What have they do with their kids? What do they do at home? What books do they read? If they are people that want to connect with others, or if they say, I just want to do my thing and I don't want to do anything with everything else. If that's the kind of person, there's plenty of environments where that can be very successful. Spire is not necessarily going to be that environment because we want you to be part of us.
I like it. And I love everyone that's part of the interview process has 2 values. If you're recruiting to your culture, you understand what are the values of your culture, and everyone has 2 that they're looking for in the interview process so that if something's missing, you know it and you know it early, and you might spare yourself and the candidate an awful lot by not actually bringing them onto the team.
Exactly.
Wow. Love the story. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got to ask about squash. Never played it. Never even had a guest that has squash as their sport on this podcast. You compete in a 4-walled court, small, hollow rubber ball.
Yeah.
You took it on the advice of a mentor. And I know you said in an interview that it's maybe been one of the most greatest pieces of advice that a mentor has given you.
Yeah. You got to find something that really allows your brain to do something very, very different, something that increases your physical fitness level. I'm a big believer in the longevity trend. Cardiovascular fitness and strength have a huge impact on longevity. The really unique thing about squash is that it's an enclosed environment where you have to share the space in a respectful way with another person, with a competitor.
Right.
Whenever you are sharing the space with a competitor, that generally often creates injuries, which is getting more tricky as you get older because your recovery time is so long and it takes you off the sport and it has like all these negative implications. The neat thing about squash is that it has like this gentleman history where, yes, you are with a competitor and you're trying to do things with your competitor in the way. It has great respect on the court, and the game is running at 150 miles an hour. The fastest balls are flying that fast. So there literally is no time for you to think about that PowerPoint that you might have to do afterwards, or an email that you have to answer. If a ball is flying that fast and people are moving around you and you have to get out of the way and they have to get out of the way, you are so solely focused in the moment. It is almost a mystical experience.
Wow. So the mentor's advice was go find something. You got so many things going on. If you don't take yourself into something that takes your mind somewhere else, you drive yourself crazy.
Yep. The greatest amount of recreational value and recharging is exposing yourself to different experiences. Staycations are actually very difficult to make very, very recharging because your brain recharges if it gets exposed to different stimuli. Exposing yourself to something different as completely as possible generates this maximum rejuvenating and regenerative effect. And that's exactly what an hour of squash does. You are fully focused in a very different environment with your brain focusing on something entirely different without any distraction, and then has a massive regenerative effect.
All right. So I got to get one more nugget. One of the things that stood out to me is that you're a classically trained opera singer.
That's right. I'm a tenor.
Wall Street, astrophysicist conferences, music halls. What was the discipline required in that opera training that maybe has played a role in what's allowed you to be successful in other avenues of life?
A lot. The big benefit from me doing that was don't listen to others. I was actually not allowed to sing or make any music at home as a kid. As soon as I opened my mouth, like, Peter, stop. You're not musical. You can't sing.
They told you were not musical.
That is correct. Yes. Thankfully, eventually you become a teenager and you don't listen to them so much anymore. So I very painfully early on started to sing. And I love learning and growing and always coming back to that concept. So I just practiced. I competed myself into, better and better choirs. In Austria, I was living in Vienna, is a very, very competitive choir scene.
One of the greatest choirs in the history of choirs right there.
Yeah. Eventually you get paid for singing. It gets even more competitive. Thankfully, as a tenor, it's a little bit less competitive because there are so few of us that as long as we know which way is up on the music score, we are kind of like in. But I just practiced a lot and ignored the message that I've gotten from others. And eventually I got to meet my wife by saying, I'm singing in Carnegie Hall next week. Do you want to come? And the rest is history.
There's a pickup line.
Yeah.
So is there a person in your professional life that's served a role for you like a coach did in athletics? I mean, is there someone that's kind of been your mentor and coach that's been really impactful to you?
I would say that I've been fortunate in the way that a number of people conglomerate into like that person that you described. There were people when I was young that provided great guidance to me. I had a very, very good priest that was the spiritual center of the community that I grew up in and taught us a lot about tolerance and about openness and about looking out for more in life than just your professional success. It's the accumulation of a number of those people over every single decade or so, decade and a half. There has been a person that played that role most prominently, and I was able to learn and gain something from. And I would say, like, overall, one of the things that connects me with sports is this concept of a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge believer in coaches, and I've always throughout my life sought out coaches for different parts of my life. And as you grow in athletics, or I grow in the business world, you start to recognize and realize that your performance in the competition is driven more and more by your mental and your emotional performance, and less so than your physical performance. And really leaning into that growth of mental and emotional capabilities, capacities, is something that grew out of that embracing of coaches that I had always as a young person, and then seeking them out over time, over the course of my life, and still do to today. Working with 2 or 3 coaches for different areas of my life at any given point in time.
Good. And maybe it's one of the greatest challenges of executive leadership. You're expected to know it all, And every once in a while, you need somebody to talk to help give you some additional outside guidance. And a good coach can do that. Is there a favorite failure that actually probably turned out to be one of the most important parts of your growth in leadership?
Oh, there are too many, unfortunately. Recognizing that whenever something goes right in a company, there is a person that you can know and point to. And whenever something goes wrong, there is a person that you can know and point to. And making a bad choice in hiring and then not recognizing that I made a mistake has been the most detrimental and difficult for the company in terms of mistakes and failures that I have made. And just always being open and realizing that it's all about the people and having the right people on the team. There actually is a truth that if you have someone who is not right, holding on to that individual is really detrimental to everyone else. Even if you can manage it, but it just damages the team and you're doing a massive disservice to the team, because a great team has the right to have great teammates. And they have a right to demand from you to ensure that they have fantastic teammates, because great people, they're here to win.
So, what makes a great teammate in your world?
In our world, the way we define it's under the value of collaborative. Winning is a team sport.
Mm-hmm.
Winning is what we're here for. It's not for the glory for an individual. A great teammate says, this is the role that I'm playing. Talking about Jennifer, she's a person I won't ever forget because she had something that she really wanted to do, but it was not the best thing for the team. And she said, I give up that because there's something that I can contribute that will make this team better. And better, man, did she make us. That is a fantastic teammate. It is you're part of something that has a mission, and the mission is more important than who gets called out and who gets like the glory. You're there to accomplish something together, and you all derive meaning from achieving that. And it's not an elbowing of who gets more glory from the outside world.
Peter, I'm fascinated. Like, the more I read about what you do, the less I figured my sports writer self could communicate with you. I got a great deal of pages and pages of notes all written here. Thank you for bringing it down to my level.
Bringing it down to my level, I totally disagree with that. There is so much stuff that that you have experienced that I don't, that I was very honored to have this conversation with you and that you find it interesting.
Oh my gosh. I tell you, I think I may have just done the interview that my 15-year-old son will listen to and actually think, Dad, you finally got someone cool on your show. People that want to learn more about Spire or more about you, where can they go?
The best thing would be actually at LinkedIn. I try to write something on a regular basis, generally mix it up, personal stories and stories about the company. And then the company has a pretty active webpage as well. So if you're interested in space, if you're interested how space can create a better life on Earth, if you're interested in climate change and weather, follow the stories of Spire. There's going to be some interesting things that you might learn.
Peter, thank you so much. Thanks today for being a corporate competitor with us.
My pleasure. It was a true honor. Thanks for having me.
Think about this. The guy is a tenor. He's a volleyball player. He plays squash. He's an investment professional and is putting satellites in space. I don't know that you could cover any more ground, literally, or space in one conversation than we just did. That guy fascinated me. Peter was really impressive. But there were three great takeaways for me. The first was growing your change muscle. And I love the way he equates change to growth. Change equals growth. And then when you grow, you change. It's a never ending cycle. It's continuous. And our challenge, as he said, is to constantly be seeking both change and growth. Because as we do the two, we're finding the very best in who we can be. The second big takeaway was, as candidates for jobs were interviewing with the company, everyone in the interview process was listening for two specific values that they needed to hear from the candidate that aligned with the values of the company. Very tactical, but so wonderfully useful. I can imagine how that would be helpful as we all are looking to surround ourselves with the best possible talent. And then finally, when he started talking about squash and that advice from his mentor to find something that allows your brain to do something different and difficult. When you're thinking about a ball that's flying around at 150 miles an hour, he said, you're not thinking about the email you need to reply to or the PowerPoint sitting there waiting to get finished. We all need that checkout. And if you can add some physical fitness to it, it's even better. Peter was a fascinating lesson today, and I can't wait to continue learning from him. I hope that we all today are better corporate competitors for having listened to this conversation. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir.
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. I appreciate you.